Hello, welcome to True Hoop with me, Jarod Hector, and True Hoop boss, Henry Abbott. How are you, sir?
Good, man. David's in LA doing like
Mhm.
Angelino things.
Yep, training players and
NBA
stuff.
people.
Hanging out with like GMs and doing all kinds of cool things. He's a very busy, popular guy.
And the podcast quickly became like less of a priority as soon as the plane touched down. Did you notice that?
Yes. Playoffs here. Very busy, guys. Got no time. All right. Well, Henry, you already turned in a draft of your book. So where are we in the book process? Your editor is like, dude, this chapter gotta go. I need a new one. Is this what's happening?
That has happened recently. Yeah, for sure. Actually, one of the notes was basically just like, like there's the biggest Google Doc you've ever seen, and now we're at the stage where I'm chasing him through the doc. He's putting in all these things, like, and I'm trying to map up all this stuff, and we're pretty close to the end now on what will become the third draft. And it's good. I feel great about it, but there was one chapter, honestly, one of the chapters that I felt was most done, and he's basically just like, I don't even know what's going on here. We gotta like just reimagine like this one. So I think it spent like a month. Like I had to completely rewrite this chapter. So. Travis, we work with, like, he edits books as well. It's another job, and he's like, I've never seen someone put so much time into rewriting. I'm like, well, you're right. This is how we're doing it. Like, it's got to be a humbling experience, I imagine, Henry, right? Because you, in some ways, it is your life's work, right? That you spend all this time on, and then somebody I'm sure you have a great working relationship with, tells you, yeah, no, reimagine. You're like, I'm sorry, what? Reimagine? Oh no, I really genuinely in the editorial process, whether I'm in the role of editor or writer, like you cannot be a professional and have an ego. Like, it's just like I liked it like that isn't a thing. We just have to get it so that it works the best, right? Same with an NBA player and a coach. It's like, we need buckets, man. Yes. We need stops and buckets. And you felt like doing this certain play, like, get the fuck out of here, right? Like, we're adults. Like, yeah, no, I'm just like, I have put I'm 49. I've been in this business my whole life. It's all I've ever known. Like, I put everything I have into this, and it's not good enough. Like, and it just needs to, and that's why we have Tom Mayer, ladies and gentlemen, from Norton Publishing, is a very brilliant man. Like, everything he says, I'm like, oh, it's really smart. Like, it's going to take all of us, right? But actually, the thing that's happening now, Jarod, that's really cool is illustrations. Illustrations. It's been hard. Actually, this podcast played a role in this. I was on the podcast. I mentioned as an aside that I was having a hard time finding an illustrator.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
It wasn't that long ago.
Nope.
Dude called me after that, heard the podcast, called me, and is the illustrator now.
Nice.
Yeah. I knew him before, but I didn't know that he did that kind of stuff. And it's like, I've thought about this stuff so much, and I'll just be walking the dog or whatever now, and I'll get a text of just like, the coolest picture you've ever seen of like a thing from the book. And I'm like, and it's like, sorry, I didn't mean to text you. I'm like, text me all the time. Like, there's nothing I love more than getting beautiful artwork of like something that's been only living in my head, like,
well, listen,
the best.
So everyone knows by now, your book is really about like injuries, right? And like how we prevent them, and, more about the hip and like all these various body parts that we have that are super powerful.
Why are we talking about the Knicks?
Well, we're getting to them. But in a book like that, I think illustration is very important. Listeners of the podcast know, as a competitive swim coach, one of my favorite things and authors I read was Milton Elms, who coached at Stanford. Not only was Milt a biomechanics and a coach, he was also an illustrator. And I've had the period of like actually speaking to him one-on-one, and like when he's talking to you, what's so good? He's talking, and he's like, man, forget that. You got your head block, hip blocks, and you're like, seeing what he is saying, I got it now. I know exactly what you mean and where their body should be positioned and what should we do here and here. It's beautiful. So in this book, I think it's so important for people to see, oh, I get it. This matters.
Oh, there's so much. There, like, if you think about people become a pilot, or Top Gun, right? And they're like, they talk about the pitch and yaw and like all these terms that like I think are designed to make us not be pilots. So they make it so it seems like they're magicians, right? They have anytime the three-dimensional thing is moving in space, like it has so many ways it can move that you need a million words to describe it, right? Yeah. So, one of the more basic terms I've had to learn is hip external rotation. Like, now think about that for a second. Does that make sense to you? Hip external rotation, like
kind of, but not really.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. It's basically like pigeon position,
like in yoga. Yeah, pigeon pose.
Hip external rotation, like you're pushing your hip, so like you're rotating your knee out. Okay, so That's one. I contend that since the time of like Leonardo da Vinci, they've had the same terms of how our bodies move, and it's all like distal, radial, adduction, abduction. Like, I think it's a conspiracy to make us all just not understand it. Like, I don't really think that, but like, it's just as soon as they start saying the blah 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 biomechanics terms, I'm like, I'm sorry, this is just offensive way to phrase this. Like, talk to me like Jarod's buddy who knows how to use English to describe the human body. And so to avoid the book being just unreadable with that jargon, like, John Early is the man's name. He's a wonderful guy. He will show you a picture of like what we're doing when we try to open up the hip or whatever the thing is. There's a bunch of stuff in there. P3 has a bunch of stuff that no what other gym does. There's weird moves that like that I do all the time now. And like, I don't like, it's like things are happening at diagonal angles that like, if I write it in text, it's going to ruin your day, and we're not going to sell any books. Like,
well, as someone who has an advanced copy, lovely. There's great stories in there. And what Henry's really good at is explaining things through story, right? Through narrative. And that's like, so you're getting stories about, oh, here's an athlete who used to do X and now they do Y. It's like, why do they do Y? Well, here's why. That's what they did there. Here's why.
Because they had Thibodeau. Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's wonderful. So anyway, I'm glad that you are enjoying the process, and I liked how you brought it up. You're like, we're all professionals, man. We want to make this the best thing possible. So it doesn't matter what I want to do. What's the best for us to do, right? So that we make this successful. Henry, I think the Knicks maybe. I don't know. I don't know if they know about we making things.
I mean, we're lucky. I mean, I'm very happy to be on the show today, right? Like, this was probably peak.
It was
the
so
peak
fun.
of the NBA season was probably the last 3 days, right?
So
like,
fun.
We didn't get all of our game sevens, but close, right? And
very close.
And I mean, a huge comeback from the Timberwolves, and the Knicks have been the most fun team to watch for months. Like, I mean,
Henry, what is it about that? Is it so? It's like a chicken and egg question. Is it that for years and decades we've been given the story through narrative that the mighty warrior and above all else and to the death, and he's just dragging his carcass across the field, and that's what matters? Like, is that why this Knicks team resonates so much with us? Because they're just a bunch of like quote unquote warriors who let me quote unquote die out there. I mean, they literally almost died out there.
Yeah, I do think. Well, part of it is I think like New York City has so much love for basketball. It's a giant city that's just like. I don't know if you saw Howard Beck tweet yesterday, like that he was walking in Brooklyn and there was like a mom and a son, and the mom's just like, well, you're a Knicks fan, like you're gonna have to get used to disappointment. And like these conversations have been happening all over the city for decades, right? So like, I do think when that team, it's not the only team, but when that team is good, a lot of people are excited just because a lot of people are local, right? And a lot of people have that MSG dream, and you know, it's a big deal. So that's exciting to see those people happy, right? Like.
The secret is that this town, New York City, where I live, is a Knicks town.
It's like, a Knicks town.
As good as the Yankees and whatever.
The Rangers are killing it right now. Like,
all that's well and good, and they'll have support. But when this Knicks team is good, there is nothing like it in this city. Nothing. Continue.
And it's a city that could use a little, like, you know, a little, great job, everybody.
Could use a lot of great job, everybody. Yeah.
So there's that. But I also think, okay, are you up for a really weird class from my really weird story from my gym class?
I'm in. I love it. Love where we're going already.
Okay, so the other day we did this workout, which starts with 100 consecutive pull-ups, which is
a lot of pull-ups.
Ridiculous. So I made, and everyone gets a little whiteboard to figure out how you're gonna keep track of them, right? I wrote on the board 5 because I was trying to do math, because I know once you start, the math goes away, right? So I wrote 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 8. This is sets of 20. That's math.
Yep.
Okay. So the dude next to me was like, wait, you're going to do 5 and then 7 and then 8? And I was like, I'm going to do whatever I think I can do, but like, I might do it that way. You know, like, but he was like, basically he was like, he couldn't imagine, I think this is very common, that you would stop before you're exhausted. Right? Like, I'm trying to get through 100.
Correct.
And so to me, like, I'm trying to get to the last set with the ability to do the last set.
Correct.
Right? And this is pacing, right? This is every race, you know, like when people are trying to set world records in running, they almost always negative split, right? They almost always run the second half faster than the first half. Like, because it's probably the same effort, but you're spending more of the race on the right side of the red line, right? And once you get across the red line, like a lot of things can break, right? It might be physical, it might be mental, but like it's just tricky, right? So if I started with as many pull-ups as I could do, then I would, after that point, do every single pull-up in an especially painful with like poor form and bloody
Correct.
hands and whatever,
Yep.
right? So to me, like, pacing is a real thing, and the NBA is looking like the way it's structured is a little bit more like a marathon than like a sprint, right? And
Sure is.
but the Knicks play it like it's a sprint, right? So it's fun to see people who are all in, right? So you see like Josh Hart, the way he's the portrait of this,
Yep.
right? Like did he hold some back? Fuck no, he didn't.
He did not.
And it's kind of fun to see someone if you go to a rock concert,
Yeah.
this is what they're selling, is just like, oh, I'm so all in, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Like, and it would be cool if football works like that.
Yep.
Right? They play once a week.
Uh-huh.
Like basketball, it's like, man, if you go all in, which is what we all want, everybody wants you to jump super high and knock people over and scream and yell, and all that is super great. But this is a sport where they just play too often for humans to keep it up without breaking. So like, I think this is like, you know, it worked for a while. Everyone loved it. And then I in our little call, I mentioned it's like sprinting the first, mile of the marathon.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, you see those people in mile 23 grabbing their hamstrings, right? And
Yep.
and that's what happened.
It is. Wow, the Knicks. We talked about it in our pre-call, and we talked about it in our chat, and you said, we should frame this around the idea of, can injuries be prevented? And that was the big talking point throughout that series. Obviously, the Pacers won in 7 games and won relatively handily. This game was, once they went ahead, Knicks never really had a chance. And one thing I said on the call today was, the Knicks fight, every time they cut it to 6, ostensibly Henry was with the same guys on the court at all times. But every time that happened, it was okay because the Pacers are going to rotate a fresh group in who's just been sitting for the last 7 minutes.
And one of them's like crazy TJ McConnell who just like,
exactly. And that has, yes, TJ McConnell in like the aggregate, right? Like if you are picking sides, you're going to pick Jalen Brunson ahead of him, right? Every time because he is better. However, a tired, hurt Jalen Brunson versus a rested TJ McConnell going to win that battle just about every time, right? Like,
especially when all he has to do is exhaust Jalen, and
Correct.
the Pacers win, right? It's great if he scores and it's great, but if he just makes Jalen work really, really hard, then like the clock is ticking on Jalen being an all-star type Jalen, and he's getting towards
correct
a bench warmer type Jalen, right? Like,
yeah, and it was just a recipe in. I mean, the Pacers played 9 guys that series. The Knicks played 5.5, and that math eventually, where this wouldn't have mattered. Would have been if the Pacers won, the Knicks won game 3 and they were up 3-0, then they only had to win 1 of the last 4, right? Once that series extended, I was like, you're on the red line of that RPM, and you're not going back to the even side. So, and everyone broke. OG broke. Jalen broke in the last game. Hand got fractured in the third quarter. As I said in the chat, it wouldn't have mattered. They were losing that game anyway. In my opinion, Hartenstein got hurt. It just they had no answers. And Tibbs after the game, classic Henry, did his whole, I thought guys give everything they had, and that's all you can ask. It was a battle out there, and we had nothing left to give. And that sounds all great, and it's like, but you could have avoided that. So they had more to give.
Yeah, there's I have so many thoughts on this. Like, one is, when we work extra hard, right? Like when we tap into our Josh Harts, right? Like we might just do more, but this is fixed minutes. Like every minute that he plays OG or Jalen is one that he takes away from Alec Burks, right? Yep. Like, and it's what's weird to me is like as the commentary around the team from TV and from fans is like basically like, oh well, they had to. It's like what you're saying is that these dudes just suck, right? But they don't suck.
Correct.
Like this is a really weird. It's weird to put players in these desperate situations that really, in some cases, are career threatening, right? Like this hamstring. OG's hamstring injuries are a big deal, right? And you don't get to have like a bunch of them, and stay elite. Like he's a special athlete who, if he played 4 minutes, I think, in Game 7. But if he played, 20, maybe he would never move like OG again, right? Like what a crazy thing. The point of that is just to avoid playing Alec Burks, like who was good. Like it's so strange to me. And the other point is, the Pacers started strategizing for this series years ago, right? Like they developed this blur ball approach where they're playing, Pascal played huge minutes in Toronto, but he averaged, I think, 31 minutes a game once he got there. Like, and they had no one among the league leaders in minutes on the Pacers this year. None in the top 10. And I think after Tyrese, they had like almost no one else.
Mm-hmm.
All of these dudes who are playing super fast and super fresh played very few minutes this year. And I don't think that minutes are the magic bullet. I've been on this topic for a long time, and I'm kind of dialing back. Like, I don't think it's strictly that like fewer minutes prevent injuries, but I think
kind of minutes.
Well, no, I think there's just like human bodies break down for all kinds of reasons, right? And you want to know like what, like we treat heart attacks now with like, 10 years before you have a heart attack, they might put this guy on a statin and have this one exercise. This one's going to change the diet. Like, this is how we prevent injuries, right? Is like reading all the signals long before, right? Some people might need way more work, but it might not be basketball playing work. It might be weightlifting work. Or it might be fixing your hip external rotation work. It might be all kinds of things. So everybody has their own little recipe, but nobody has time for any of that stuff, right? And like, so to me, like Thibodeau is going to find the point that you're depleted. You might be depleted by your biomechanics falling apart, by your blood values falling apart, your saliva. So there's all these measurable things. Your sleep, these things super matter. But if you still have more to give, he's going to play you more. Right. This is that 5-7-8 thing on my little thing. He's going to go like 35. Now I can do that 30. Right. It's like, well, if anything was going to go wrong with my pull-ups, we were going to find him that day. Right. And like,
got that right.
Yeah. So he's just like, and what's weird to me isn't that there's a coach or players who want to play that way. I think that's kind of natural. And look, he's a fucking incredible coach, right? There's a lot of coaching besides this minutes thing, right? And like Dante DiVincenzo is
unreal,
way better under Thibodeau, right? Like
than he was under Kerr.
Way better. Josh Hart. I'm a Blazer fan. Josh Hart was on our team. He was fine. And he wasn't like this, Like this guy's a great coach, but he has this little, they literally fired him in Minnesota because he wouldn't listen to the science on injury prevention. And all those Bulls like had depressingly injury riddled careers, right? I think if we're going to in the future get better at this. The science has kind of already exists, kind of knocking around the fringes of the sport, but like we're going to look back at this as like not the way to do it, right? And what's weird to me is that as he's doing it, everyone's like, it's the only way to do it. It's like, no, it's not the only way to do it. Like the people who did it the other way are called the Indiana Pacers, and they just fucking waxed you, right? Like
pretty much.
Like that's what happened. Like I had, who was the bounciest, freshest looking player in the series? Would you say?
Toppin, Shepard, like those guys, Isaiah Jackson.
Probably,
I mean, TJ McConnell's not bouncy, but he had like the springiest legs. Like he was running up and down like that.
Yeah, So I'm like, how do you? Okay, so that's the vision. That's it. That's the goal. Let's back time it. Like, what do you do with those guys to get them here now, like that, right? Yeah. Why can't we get star players here now like that? Jalen Brunson like that is in the conference finals.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
And it's incredible. So you talked about minutes may not be the thing, but I do think it's worth bringing up here. The Knicks have 3 players in the top 5 in total minutes in these playoffs. 2 were over 500, and that's Hart and Brunson. Conversely, the Pacers had 3 players, McConnell, Shepard, and Toppin, who play significant playoff minutes, all 3 of them under 250 total minutes this postseason. And to me, that says something. Like Henry talked about the marathon, and I said, yeah, it's if you split a marathon into third, it's like you're running the marathon Tibbs's way. You're going from the beginning, and you're racing someone else. But instead of someone else, you're racing 3 someone else.
They're doing a relay.
Yeah. Right. One person runs the first one, second. Yeah. You're going to lose every time to that person, right? Like, just because they've been well-rested and hanging out, and you're in the red, right? Like, and it's a thing. And I, so much of it is about how we've always done things, which I've said before. That is the worst fucking phrase in human language. Well, this is how but why? It's like, well, you got to play your starters. But why do you have to play your starters 40-plus minutes? Says who?
Yeah.
According to what? Because that's what we did 80 years ago. Again, Pacers, 30-something minutes, 30 minutes. Pascal, 32 was averaging this postseason. And they waxed them in Game 7. Waxed. That sounds like a better plan to me. And it isn't because Obi Toppin is somehow way better than anybody on the Knicks, whom, by the way, you had Obi Toppin. So, right? Like.
But they didn't need him because they had Julius Randle. Oh shit.
Right. Really? How's that working out for you right now? And it's just a matter of, I said on the call this morning, Henry, building your bench. First of all, it takes GM and everybody in your organization to have a long-term plan and vision. That we're going to have a roster full of guys who help us win possessions from player 1 to player 15. Okay. When we get to the playoffs, we play 9, 10, whatever our rotation is. Everyone's not going to be nervous or unsure of what to do because they're going to play all season long. The problem with that, though, is that means in October, November, December, you're going to lose a lot, especially with young, because they're going to make mistakes. That's just, but David says it all the time. Playing time is oxygen for these guys. They have to be out there and make mistakes so they have reference points so they learn. Indiana was at one point battling for a top 3 seed. They're shifting things around. They ended up being a 6. But all those guys had minutes all year long. Nobody in this series looked afraid or out of sorts because this is what we do. Whereas other teams, they're forced to play guys who haven't played it long. Thank God Alex Burks played well. He's a veteran, but you've got these 20-year-olds on your bench who could help, but Tibbs ain't going to play him because he has to grind out and win every regular season game.
And I think you should look right now. Like if I were running a team, you should be super expert in the Neesmiths and the Shepherds, right? Like it's not because they're so good or hard to find. It's that they're good enough, and they can move, and they're young, and they're affordable. And I think it's extra smart. Well, in the case of Neesmith, right? Like here's a guy who's been around. Like because of a strange quirk of my life, I ended up watching a fair amount of the draft combine late one night, and they had Lawrence Frank on there, and he's basically like, year 1, we're on your team. You get any player on your team, year 1, we're just gonna like look for good stuff. He's like, year 2, there should be some legitimate positive signs what you're doing, and like in year 3, you need to produce, right? Like, I don't know if that's a good analysis, but that's what he said. Okay, so to me, I'm like, if you can get someone else to pay for year 1 and year 2, like get someone who's right before year 3, right? Especially with this as a weak draft. Like if you have a pick in this year's draft and you don't like, you can like trade that pick for the Aaron Neesmith of, you know what I mean? Like,
correct.
Like just get someone who's ready to, who your coach will trust, right? And then build the trust, right? And yeah, I feel like, Rick Carlisle playing 9 guys all year won this series, and the commentators never once recognized it or noticed it or said anything about it, and they just don't understand the marathon. They don't.
It's almost as if during the broadcast, Henry, when the benches they say nothing.
It's weird.
It's like, right? Well, there are 5 guys on the floor right now who are winning possessions. Like, and you said something about year 3, you have to produce. Production is a broad word. It could mean scoring 20 points a game. It could mean grabbing 10 rebounds a game. It could, all the things that like make our eyes and our synapses fire. It could also just mean winning possessions, right? Yeah. Like, and that matters, right? Like the bench in this series, I mean, it wasn't even close. They demolished the Knicks, because the Knicks don't play a bench, right? So, and it's just, again, you see the NBA as a copycat league. How it is these teams don't see this is beyond me. But you talk about all the time. It's, you don't win the press conference by playing guys who nobody's heard of. Even in defeat, right? Sib said, we did everything we could. We let everyone who's associated with the Knicks, I'm assuming, I don't know this for a fact, is feeling good right now, right? Their fans certainly are. Nothing else we could have done. We left it all out on there. Our guys gave everything. Like, but you could have done better and possibly been in the finals right now if you played more than 4.5 guys or 5.5 guys.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I don't know if Thibs will ever change, right? Like, I don't know. Like, he's a smart guy, and I think he just has like a certain bloody mindedness about this, where, it almost feels like it's like something from his childhood or something, or you know what I mean? There's some kind of like anxiety about looking soft, right? And it's like, I mean, is Rick Carlisle soft today? Like, I don't know.
Doesn't look like to me. He's in the conference finals is where he is.
Actually, it's a little bit like we talk about the book. It's like, no, we just need to do what works, right? We just need to figure out what's going to work. And it's like, this thing doesn't work. Like, I don't know. I felt, I'm sure millions felt the same thing, but like the moment Josh Hart grabbed his abdomen,
done. Like,
they were already stretched so thin. And, they just, what they would give for a Ben Shepherd right there, or just like somebody, like, I was like, man, now it just seems like they just don't have enough juice. Like, the longer they play, the more the Pacers are favorites, right?
Yep.
Like, and why? Because they can run and jump. And like, I know that isn't a thing that's not a tank that's going to refill before next year, right?
Definitely not. And look, we hope that you finish every season. It's always reflection time, right? Okay, what worked well? Clearly, there is a culture and an ethos that Tibbs has established and built there, which is wonderful. Those guys compete hard. Look, competing hard is a thing. You can't win if you don't compete hard. That's already built, and you have the right guys. They all have, as the kids say, that dog in them. Great, wonderful,
great.
So can we also now add some other guys so that dog that's inside of all of them can be out more often, right? He can be out all the time because you're not playing 48 minutes a night.
I mean, if I were the league, I would think about this very seriously. Like, people like this. This was a win, right? This was almost Linsanity. Can we make the schedule so that, like football does, so that it's actually good strategy to go crazy fucking hard all the time? Right. They've consistently not done that, but it's a choice.
And they won't.
It's a choice they're making over evidence, right? Like, they're looking at what would really potentially work as a business. The NFL is a way bigger business than the NBA. They play once a week. Like, I'm not saying that it's that simple, but like, there is a model of scarcity. Scarcity is a part of economics, right? And like,
fact.
And we have in this sport pretty pedestrian ratings for regular season games, right? And we would have, like, what we really sell is stars, and at all times, 1 or 2 or 3 of the tip top stars are out, including all of these playoffs, right? We're just we're paying a huge price by not having stars, and if we can't, like, so the model that kind of works is like not going all in, right, and holding back, keeping really good players on the bench, or frankly playing like Jokic does, where he doesn't jump, right, and barely runs. Like, that's what works in this marathon. Like, marathon running is not nearly as exciting as like 200-meter hurdles. If you want the 200-meter hurdles, you should schedule it like the fucking 200-meter hurdles, right?
Correct.
Like, you shouldn't make it 20 miles long. Like,
could you imagine a 20-mile hurdle race?
Oh god. Yeah. I guess steeplechase kind of like that.
I guess.
Yeah. That's only 3K, I think. But
Jesus Christ.
But that's what the NBA is, right? It's literally like the conversations. I do feel super lucky in like this phase of my life. Like, we get to see inside the lab. Like, I talk to David Thorpe every day about what he's working with real NBA players on, and people at P3, and how people are really preparing for this war. And like, honestly, a lot of what works is different from doing your best.
Yeah.
Right. It's just not smart strategy with this crazy setup to just go hard. It's just like, too bad.
We've been champions on this podcast forever about, if you're going to do this, then we need to reduce the season. We talked about that, how that'd be so much better as a TV product, as something that you deliver. Like, it's just, imagine you're a fan of the Knicks and all right, we play on Tuesdays and Saturdays.
Yeah.
That's all I have to focus on. Like, you would see it would be so much better, and your players would be healthier and all the things. But again, let's go into this injury thing, Henry, because you said, can we prevent injuries? And I said to you, Henry, this is a contact sport. How can we prevent injuries? I was like, a guy goes up for a dunk and some other guy goes up to block him and they just collide midair. Somebody might get hurt. Like, is that like, can you?
And then I said some stuff, and then next thing you know, you were telling me that the ball boys are part of a conspiracy, and there's a lot going on here. This is the main point. But and
then I was like, well, so then basically, are we saying that if everything is about fatigue and your mental capacity, so when guys, and I'm using air quotes so those who can't see, slip on the court because of a wet spot,
they do slip on the court.
Is it not a wet spot? No. It's just all a joke.
Okay.
Like,
I would like to unpack this a little bit. So look, you're right. There's some injuries. Like, I know that the number of newtons of force involved in some injuries are like getting hit by a car. Like,
for example, Pat Bev running into Russell Westbrook. That's just like, right? Like, you did that shit
probably,
on purpose.
Yeah.
And that was just a jerk being a jerk.
It's probably the case. Like, but I think that we're right. Every time someone does get hurt, I think we're right to kind of interrogate, could it have been avoided? And I think the answer is yes, way more than you think. And in your, like, these collision moments are one example where, like, so one of the kinds of fatigue is neurological fatigue. This might be like you didn't sleep. They say people who don't sleep are almost like drunk drivers, right? Like, you're just sloppy in the brain. Okay, so I'm telling you, NBA players drive the lane that kind of quote drunk every night of the season, right? No one's got a good healthy sleep pattern and sunlight and all the things I recommend, right? So does it diminish your ability to avoid a collision, like, or to have perfect balance upon landing? Like, of course it does, right? So there are all these, like, people go airborne and evade a defender or collide in a way that ends up being safe all the time. Like, if you're just over fatigued and that is a little down, then like maybe that's the one. Like, Derrick Rose had his ACL tear on a pretty routine drive for him, right? Like, he often manages that really well, right? But this time he didn't. So I think that's part of it. And also there's like, plyometrics. Have you ever done? Do you use plyometrics? Okay, so mostly you're learning to keep your foot quick on the ground, right? As you're reducing the time. So if you are doing like bounding or jumping off a box or even sprinting is kind of a plyometric. You're training these ground foot interactions to be extremely snappy and tidy, right? And strong. When you're tired, and you can see this in data from just like running races, right?
Not so good.
The top racers in the world will have their foot on the ground for, I'm just going to say X. I think that's really like, I want to say it's like 0.08 of a second, something like that. And then, but at the end of the race, it's like 0.12, which doesn't seem like a big difference, but that means you're not running the way you trained to run. And now the forces that you've trained to run, like from the ball of your foot into your Achilles, into your quad, into your glute in a nice tidy way. Now they're like bumper cars up your leg, and maybe they go in a good, safe way, and maybe they don't, right? And so even these non-contact ACL tears, potentially, conceivably, this is a live debate in science, but like are more likely when you're sloppy because you're tired, right? So the word tired, honestly, years ago, I just asked some people what the word tired means. No one even knows the full answer to that, right? It's like a bunch of different things, but you might have low blood sugar, you might have not slept well, you might be stressed in some other way, right? Like if you have a fight with your loved one, you might be more likely to get an injury because of that, right? So anyway, I think there's a lot we could do to kind of like sort out who's ready today. And I think that's the direction this is going to head is, and I'm telling you, I had like conversations with big NBA bigwigs years ago, and they were basically like, we just can't deal with that. Like once you sort out particularly the sleep part, like can we get players to the start line who are like their little sleep app readings would predict that they're good to go today? Like they basically have to cancel the whole season.
No,
they're like basically like they had the story of like some sleep doctor visiting, and they were just like, I'm sorry, we just can't do this. Like,
I mean, and that's for a variety of reasons. Stuff that we can say, stuff that we can't say publicly why their sleep patterns are not great, right?
It's really travel.
But the main one is being on planes and landing in cities at 2 a.m. and like having to be ready for a game that night at 7:30, right? Like that's
and once they get, and we did this thing with the sleep expert at ESPN, Sherry Ma, where she would pick a team to win. We call them schedule losses. Like we like just look at the schedule at the beginning of the year and pick a team to lose a game because they've crossed 3 time zones or whatever. That like they're all different criteria that she had from science. She picked Jarod. She picked agnostic of the teams. No consideration for which team was better.
Right.
She just picked the schedule, and she beat Vegas. Like she killed it year after year. And like if that's happening, like I feel like that's very strong evidence that players are playing tired.
Correct. No, it is. I mean, like the season is too long. It's too compressed. We have this also arcane thing where like the NBA's job somehow is to fill billionaire sports arena owners with dates. And so because of that, we have to compress them. Oh, we got the circus coming in. So that means you got to play 4 times in 5 nights because, Ice Capade starts on Saturday. It's like, wait, what? Like, are these literally the... And that's the thing. Like we're making considerations for billionaires' buildings. And it's kind of like, what?
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
And in the new TV deal, presumably, if it's anything like, what we've been told, then this building revenue is not significant. Like it's incrementally important, right? But it's not the core of the thing, right? So it's like, why do we have to succumb? Why do we have to make Jalen Brunson show up exhausted just so you can have a little more beer sales in February, right? Like,
agreed. It's crazy. But it is something that, the league, as fans, we should closely pay attention to this as time goes on, because ultimately how it happens is that it's a conveyor belt, right? The billionaires don't ultimately care about this because, what do they say? It's okay. Someone will be in the next draft. We'll get somebody else. And ultimately they will, right? Someone else will come in and fill the spot. It's a rotating. The problem is that for that player and for us, we get robbed of the brilliance and the greatness of the longevity of Jalen Brunson or Derrick Rose or any of these guys, right? Luol Deng, like to go all the way back, right? Like we get robbed of that and they get robbed of it.
Well, we don't have anybody. I mean, Anthony Edwards is, I think, the only like star who's in the conference finals who's like bouncy, right?
Very bouncy.
Maybe Jason Tatum, like, but like, you know, if you were to look at like the highlight reel, the Jordan-esque movers of the league, like the 22-year-old is the one who's hanging still, right? Like mostly it's not a good approach. It's better to be ground bound, right? Like it's better to play some anyway. Yeah, and yeah, it's an exciting time because I do think it's going to get better, and it's an exciting time because we have amazing players. But it's a bummer that, like, you know, the list of players who we'd love to be watching right now who we're not watching is as long as my arm.
Very long, yeah.
And there's no one to blame for that, right? Like they have blood tests, they have saliva tests, they have biomechanical tests, they have like the league is riddled with data on this. And if you wanted to ask honest questions about like how we could do this better, like we would end up not where we are now, right?
And you know, the whole thing when Joe Dumars came out and like kept, you know, because obviously it was a PR move and like how they decided inside the league, we're an 82 game league, right? Like that's the phrase they kept trotting out. But you don't have to be an 82 game league is the point. And listen, smart people work in that league office. I know it. You can figure out a way to make up for the lost revenue by you can. I know you can. First of all, to your point, it's an economic model, right? If we're scarce and have less, you're going to be like, wait a minute. No, I want to get my hand. You can charge more, right? Like, that's just common sense.
Yeah, it's just, it takes change. It takes change, you know? Yeah, I don't know. And that, you know, that research was discredited. You know, so they have this, what they announced was that they can't demonstrate a connection between load management and reduced injuries. But they also said in real time that they can't demonstrate that there isn't a connection, which is really no finding at all. Right?
Correct. There's no covering your ass.
Then on top of that, and I have not, would you believe, Jarod, they didn't share it with me.
I mean, I know. That is the most shocking thing ever.
I know.
You weren't invited. I wonder why that is.
Nice guy Henry Abbott didn't get a copy. But John Hollinger pointed out in one of the findings of the year, like they excluded multi-game injuries from the analysis. What the fuck?
Right. That seems like
those are the ones you care about the most. Which to me, okay, so now we have their finding that it's arbitrary. We can't say for sure if it does or doesn't work. Like, well, what if we add in the injuries we care about the most?
I bet it does work.
It feels like it's probably going to tip it the one way, right? Like,
I bet it would.
That's like how science works and stuff. So I don't know. There's so many times I'm like, you know, we're livid at load management. Okay, fine. I get that. You bought your tickets.
You want to watch your
guys. You didn't get to see
Got
Kawhi. I'm sorry. Are we livid at the opposite of load management, which is everybody played and like no, you still don't get to see Kawhi? But now
Kawhi's still not playing.
Yeah, but this version might fuck him up forever, right? The part where like, you know, Kevin Durant gets chastised for sitting out with a legitimate injury, and everyone's like, what a wuss. There's a bunch of quotes from his own teammates and coach, right? Then he comes back, tears his Achilles, and everyone's like, he did everything he could. It's like, yeah, but now, I mean, we're lucky we got him back. But like, he didn't think he was coming back, right? It's like, if you find a limit from like preventative science, then you might miss some games, but you keep the player. Instead of next man up, it's this man up.
I love it.
Like, but if you find the limit, then you might have just like, these careers end all the time. NBA careers end all the time. We have big tours for the 1% of players, but most of them, there's a bunch of players who just don't even know they're done in the league, but they just, you know, they're on the fringe, and then they get some bad ankle or whatever, and like shows are over, folks. They end all the time, and like that doesn't seem like the best way to run these things. Just destroying people.
I agree. And look, this is something we'll continue to talk about throughout. Because things have to change, right? And I think there's a way we can do this that's better for all parties involved, including the billionaires who want to keep making money. Like, everyone can win if we do this the right way.
They want those stars on the court.
For sure they do. All right, guys, we'll be back after a brief commercial break. All right, Henry, in the other Game 7 last night.
So exciting. Oh, my gosh.
Boy, the Minnesota Timberwolves defeated the reigning champion Denver Nuggets in Game 7. And I thought it was interesting because the two Game 7 winners, Henry, were road teams. And I found this stat. Historically, home teams are 112-39 in Game 7s. That's according to StatMuse. However, since the start of the three-point era, 2016, there have been 26 Game 7s, excluding the bubble. So taking that out where there's no home court advantage. Home teams are 13-13 after the Pacers and Wolves wins. Wow. And we just spent the first half of the show talking about the Pacers and why that happened. That happened because they played 9 dudes, the Pacers. Something similar happened in Denver. Nikola Jokic, the MVP this year, played the entire second half. And Henry in our document wrote, he wasn't the MVP in the second half. And you could see it. This was a man who clearly was like, okay, my coach is keeping me out here because we have to, in theory, win this game. But I cannot win every possession, so I'm going to pick and choose how I exert my energy because I only have so much left. And in doing that, right, a compromised MVP, well, you lose because I can't do much more than what I'm doing right now. And Michael Malone doesn't trust his bench. Yep, sorry. So here we are. So after the game, Michael Malone's like, Nikola Jokic 30, whatever. We got to get those guys help. I go, well, Michael, I was going to call him Mike. You get mad. Michael, I bet you had players on your bench who could help. Peyton Watson, perhaps. But there are guys who could help if you had played them all year, if you developed trust in them, if all those things we talk about with the Knicks, if you had applied those things, your MVP would not have run out of gas in the second half, probably.
Yeah, I really recommend this exercise, but I watched the whole second half and just watched Jokic the whole time. I don't know why I did that, but I just thought it'd be fun to.
And found some things.
Jarod, it was so the pinnacle, I guess, was there was like a pick and roll with Michael Porter Jr. and a defender fell down. I can't remember who it was. And you can see it as though this space opens where Jokic could move and be unguarded either for a jumper or a drive. And you can see Michael Porter Jr. kind of like, go. And that Jokic is just standing not in the valuable space, kind of behind. And he's just like, nah, man. Like,
I can't.
I'm not doing that. And so Michael Porter Jr. launches like a contested 18-footer that I believe missed. And this is a giant, that player falling down is the dream scenario. This is the opportunity. This is the best way for a possession to end. And you just can't do that. Or actually, there was a great moment where Rudy Gobert is being closely guarded by Jokic outside the 3-point line on the left side. And then Reggie Miller's like, oh, look at the MVP picking him up way out here. He's played a lot of minutes, but he's up for it. He's prepared for this. And as he's saying that, Rudy Gobert just absolutely leaves him in the dust. Rudy Gobert, probably the 400th fastest player in the NBA, absolutely drops him. He didn't. I don't think he scored, but still, it was just no, he's not prepared for this. He wasn't up for this. And there were so many plays where he's just drifting around on defense, hoping he doesn't have to run anywhere, right? And sometimes he would offensive rebound or defensive rebound even just by one thing they teach you is to box out. The other thing is to run to space. It's often valuable to get some space, but he was run to space guy, right? He was let me just stand alone here and see. And there were so many. I guess the portrait of this story really is Cat gets his 5th foul, and that gives social cover to whoever's coaching the Timberwolves now. It's a little fuzzy.
Mike Inori or Chris Finch. We're not really sure.
The amalgamation, the Politburo of the Timberwolves. Now, once your star has 5 fouls, you don't get questioned on sports radio or by the owner for bringing in Nas Reid, right? They'd be, what the hell are we doing? We got Karl-Anthony Towns, he makes $50 million a year. Right? No. So now you sit. It's the substitution of the playoffs, right? I took notes. Let's see. So Nas comes in. What was this? I think there's maybe 5-6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. He blocks Jokic. He drives around Jokic and scores. He gets an offensive board and gets fouled trying to dunk it. He blocks Jokic again. He gets a putback dunk. And he assists corner Anthony Edwards 3 that puts the Wolves up 10. Why? Because he's a good player. Because he's been resting. We could have every player, every game, every minute in that mode. That's available to us, right? We could have that. We could have it a couple different ways. We could have it by changing the schedule or by just having freaking Tom Thibodeau trust who would it be, like, Deuce McBride
Right,
earlier in the year,
exactly.
right, or whatever it is. Instead, we have Jokic drifting around, looking like I didn't even notice this, but you and David told me that he was like taking off his shoes,
untied his shoes. Mouthpiece came out, went inside the sock already. I was like, normally he does that on the bench. He's like, nope, this game is over, because he knew mentally and physically, I'm tapped. I got nothing.
Yeah. He's not a wuss and he's not lazy. He's mismanaged, right?
Correct.
And weirdly, he's mismanaged in a way that the commentators just adore. And fans just adore.
Yeah.
Like our greatest anxiety, like it's like I really feel like people are like, oh my gosh, the worst thing that could possibly happen is that somebody took it easy. We're going to run around and we're going to police that. And we're going to we're just going to get so angry if anyone took it easy. Like, no one's taking it easy.
But that's the thing. Right?
That's not
No one is taking it easy. You're putting in someone else who's going to go hard for a few minutes so that guy can come back in and go hard again. Like, that's all.
It's a happy thing. Yeah. You like hammer dunks? I like hammer dunks. Let's get some hammer dunks. You know what I'm saying? Like,
except everybody hammer dunking. That'd be great.
That'd be great.
No, look, nothing to be said about Cat playing extremely well.
That was great.
He was awesome. And look, Cat gets a lot of shit for, some of it deserved, right? But like David's always said it. I mean, you say it, I say it. He's a brilliant, brilliant player. Very, very talented. And he played well. And Ant does a very good job, Henry. I don't know if you're noticing, of like picking Cat up all the time. No. It's about Cat.
Yeah.
This guy is so good. Like, forget those first 9 years he was here. He's good now. Like, and it's just like, and Cat's like, yeah, you're right. Ant. I am good now. Like, someone's like giving a little royal jelly. Like, and it's surprising that a 22-year-old could be the one to give royal jelly. But if you're a leader, you're a leader. And it's just wonderful. The other thing too, right? So Denver essentially plays one big in Jokic. Well, Minnesota plays three bigs. Right?
It's a lot of bigs, man.
That rotation of those three guys always being fresh, that helps, right? That wears you down eventually over time. And Jokic was worn down over time. And
there's such a handful. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, so Anthony Edwards is probably the best athlete in the NBA, maybe in the world, right? I mean, there's a lot of different ways to measure this, but
he's very good at the things that we know, running, jumping, all that. He's very good at all
unbelievable.
Those
things. And then, like there's this great line from Marcus Elliott at P3 where he's like, they made a little graph of who's good at moving laterally and who's good at moving vertically, and up in the top corner is when they initially did it, it was like Zach LaVine, Anthony Edwards, and God's chosen children.
Exactly.
Like he can really, really move, and he's big and strong. You don't need me to explain. So they have that guy playing defense. Then they have 150 bigs, as you described. And then, but I asked Marcus, who's physically the best defender in the league? Like, who has the best physical package to just play NBA defense? And he didn't even hesitate. Jaden McDaniels.
Sure does.
So I'm like, this is all of it. We're seeing like Gobert's probably the best rim protector we've had in the last decade, right? Cat has become maybe an even somehow in the playoffs even better defender.
Great post defender. He's like, look at Cat playing post defense.
Then you have the two finest athletes on the perimeter, and Mike Conley. But like this is an almost unprecedented kind of just group of movers with size who just make it. This is when you see, and one thing I was saying to David and you guys on the phone was like ISO offense stopped working for the Nuggets because everybody was just too tired. Like literally it was like, oh, just Jokic, go get us a bucket, and he was like, like they just nobody. Maybe there were like one or two buckets. Cat had a couple ISO buckets, but like
sure did.
But almost nobody was scoring that way. Buckets were coming off putbacks and shovel passes and cuts and open threes. But it was not happening from hero ball because you have to be a little fresher than that for hero ball to work.
Here is a stat that I thought was interesting. So we mentioned Jokic played the whole second half, played 47 minutes in that game. The Nuggets starters had a negative 21.6 net rating in this series, minus 60 in 136 minutes. It was the worst five-man lineup in the second round of the playoffs that played 35 plus minutes together. Folks, and this was a five-man unit that, remember, going in, what did all of us say? Best five-man unit in basketball. Yes, when they are fresh, they for sure are. And they know what they're going to run, know what they're going to get to. Guess what they couldn't do? Run their stuff. Couldn't get to their stuff.
Yeah, that was really something. So they had, I'm like, their front office should be proud because they have Zeke Naji, Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Julian Strother, Jalen Pickett, Hunter Tyson. Maybe I'm forgetting somebody else, but they have a significant pipeline of young. A lot of teams that are winning championships just don't even have anybody who might be better next year, right?
100%.
They have a bunch. Peyton Watson is a 95th percentile defender right now. And he's, I want to say 22.
Super young and bouncy.
So, they had them. Only problem is Michael Malone doesn't trust them, right? These are players who are, in many cases, probably better than Ben Shepherd.
Probably.
Right?
But Ben Shepherd gets lots of oxygen in minutes.
Yeah, Ben Shepherd gets oxygen in minutes. So, and meanwhile, like Derek Lively, unbelievably valuable for the Mavericks. He's 20 years old. Isaiah Jackson was important for the pitch. He's important for two reasons. He's important for what he did and for the rest that he got for Miles Turner while he was in, right?
Yep.
And for wearing down the Knicks bigs, right? Andrew Nembhard's 23. Jaden McDaniels is 23. Anthony Edwards is 22. Like, I guess I kind of feel like I don't know how the Nuggets get better, but I think that they're going to have to they're not going to have a fourth star the way the salary cap works. They're going to have to find cheap, energetic players who can bounce around like Isaiah Jackson, Derek Lively this time of year. And they maybe are already on the roster. They maybe are on the roster this whole time.
I'm sure they are. Like, and the thing is, Henry, they don't need a four-star. Now, Michael Malone probably thinks so. We got to get somebody in here who's going to score 25. No. You got, listen, between Murray, Jokic, and Michael Porter Jr., and KCP, and Aaron Gordon, you got plenty of. The problem is they play too many minutes. So when you need them to come back from down 10, they can't because they're exhausted. But
I really do kind of think they could use Malcolm Brogdon. Like I have been accused in our group chat of like kind of shilling for the Blazers, and fair enough. But the reason that he would be so good is that he is a veteran that Michael Malone would play, right? Like,
yes,
and he's also just he's a good player.
He's a very good player and just heady and smart. But again, first of all, and Michael Malone, these guys could have played all season long. Yeah, that might have meant you would have been a 4 seed maybe instead of the 3 seed or 2 seed, whatever it was. Gives a shit. Like
the Thunder were a 1 seed and they played young players all year.
Like, right? There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Like, it can be done. But you have to, when they airball a 3, you can't pull your hair out and yank them. Like, it's fine. It's okay. All right, you fucked up. Let's learn. Let's do it again. Like, right? Let's figure out. But this is a problem. And now the talk's going to be, all right, I'm sure we're going to trade Michael Porter Jr. probably. Let's try to get somebody else in here. Let's do it. And it's just like, no, like, you're fine. All those young guys you mentioned, and none of them, David Henry, are older than 24 years old, I'm going to guess. Those young guys you mentioned. Strother and all them.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's awesome in the playoffs? 21, 20, 22-year-old springy young legs. The best.
Yeah.
The best.
Yeah, we watched Nembhard this year kind of went through, like he became a positive plus-minus player. But that he played a ton last year and this year. I think I'm going to guess it was like a season and a half into his career before he became, well, get cracking on that. Get cracking on that season and a half, And if they don't work, if you're not going to play them, it doesn't matter if you have them anyway,
There you go. There you go. So what difference does it make anyway? Like, I just... Yeah. It's baffling. And again, it's the mindset, right? And it's how do we change the mindset? Coaches are so invested on, no, we have to win. We got to win now. Yeah, I get it. Your job depends on wins and losses. It's totally understandable.
Yeah.
But, right? Like, this guy, Jokic, that's the unicorn. That's the thing you're not going to get ever again. That guy. How do we preserve that guy so that we keep winning and keeping his window extended as long as possible? How you don't extend it is by playing him 48 minutes second half and not playing your bench. That's not how you do it.
And there's I think a lot of like the value of youth is in like bursts of energy. As a parent, I can tell you like those can be very annoying, right? Like, like this is when your kid is out of control, right? Not to compare these adults to children, but I think that but that's how coaches act. They I think that a lot of this kind of just obsessively loving veterans is because they do what you tell them to do. Coaches are control freaks, right?
They
like, there's this idea that if they watch a 19-year-old do the wrong thing or not know the play, they hang their heads and think I'm surrounded by idiots. But in fact, very often that player is more than making up for it with just being bouncy or some other thing, right? And I just think it makes coaches feel out of control. It makes coaches feel less important to have young players out there doing not what they told him to do and having it work, right?
But it's like what Davis says all the time. Veterans make mistakes too.
They make mistakes
fuck
all
up
the time.
all the time too.
Yeah. But this is like, oh my gosh, okay, this is on my mind this weekend. Like LeBron is like one of those coaches, right? LeBron doesn't like teammates who are late or young. He doesn't like young teammates. But you know who is the perfect portrait of the teammate LeBron wouldn't like?
Who?
Bronny.
Yeah, you're right.
You're still figuring it out. What
right.
the fuck? Like,
you're right.
Now he's gonna get it. LeBron's gonna need a whole new way of relating to teammates if he's gonna play with that guy. You know,
bro. Practice starts at 10. It's 6 a.m. Why aren't you here?
Totally. Like, that's exactly the profile. Like the second round pick who's kind of athletic but still figuring it out. Nope, not on LeBron's team.
He doesn't roll with those dudes.
Does not.
No, you're so right. But you're right. It's a control freak thing. It's they will make a lot of mistakes. But to your point, I often see when they know they mess up because of those young legs, they will sprint back on D because they've got tons of energy and can do it. Like, who's not doing that? 35-year-old veteran. Nope.
Not the MVP. Yeah.
They're turning around, going to the ref. Why did you call a foul?
Yeah.
Whatever. They're playing ref games.
They're ref games. There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of that going around. My point would be so much stronger right now, by the way, if the Thunder had won.
We're going to get to them right now.
Yeah.
We're going to get to them right now. Henry Abbott on this very podcast said, I don't care what you guys say. The Thunder are going to the conference finals. Who's the youngest team they got? And I'm like, okay, we'll see.
My prediction sucked.
We'll see.
Yeah.
And the reason, and look, and it's not because I don't believe in the Thunder. I think they have a very bright future, and we'll get into that in a minute. I just thought, look, none of those guys, besides SGA, and really his experience is limited, have done it on the stage before. And I think experience has some merit. It matters somewhere. I've been like, I can go into my reference point brain and say, oh, I know what this feels like. I've done this before. Most of those guys they count on have none of that, right? Okay. And then on the other side, you have two of maybe the best shot makers in basketball, in Luka and Kyrie, and that's really hard to stop. And Derek Lively, PJ Washington, Derek Jones Jr., all these guys who were playing the series of their lives, playing off of those two guys. And, really, as David wrote in his piece, the Mavericks won the trade. It's just they have the best team around those two guys. Kyrie, who you and I talked about, he's just focused on basketball. And we, not us, but the larger we media have no idea how to respond to that because he's not causing controversy. He's just kicking ass and playing great basketball. And I think it was all of that collectively was a lot for the Thunder to overcome, right? Jalen Williams, we saw, while we love him and love his potential upside, he's not there yet as, okay, who's our second guy that's going to help me score? Chet's a rookie, ran out of gas. Jalen couldn't do it. It was just SGA, which is fine, but I need more than one guy to help me get here. And they just didn't have enough.
I mean, obviously you're right. But I think Jalen Williams has the best plus minus in the playoffs.
Second best. He's like, great. I just think
he can whatever do it is, he's fucking doing it. Right? Like he's not creating like crunch time shots alone off the dribble, but there's a lot more to basketball. And like when he checks in the game, they win. And to me, this is ultimately where I come down is like, yeah, all that stuff everybody says about experience. It is potentially true, but Derek Lively doesn't have that experience.
No.
Basketball is what matters. This is the stupid Hoosiers thing where you measure the lane or whatever. It's like, no, like we're just going to play the same game, right? Like if you're good at basketball, you're good at experience and crunch time and everything, right? Just play basketball, right? And like if you can have your head be normal when the stakes are high, you're good at this, right? And so to me, I'm like, they're pretty good. Like they, Chet Holmgren like wanted to get fouled with that one game on the line and then hit both free throws. That's a rookie. Like he's fine, man. Like,
their future, as I say, looks bright.
And they could have. I mean, honestly, to me, the big surprise was like we didn't know. Like back when I was making my stupid prediction, like nobody knew. Find me anyone who says that Derek Lively and PJ Washington would be difference makers. Like
no, well,
there was a chance
only David said was
that
PJ that was a great pickup. We didn't say difference maker, but he said they wanted just a good trade for them. Whatever. We didn't know they were going to be fucking lights out from three and grabbing every rebound and playing awesome defense. Like can't predict the future. I didn't know that was happening.
And they're like super gifted athletes, right?
Fair,
like, PJ Washington's kind of a, he's not Anthony Edwards, but he's like.
He's
a big, strong,
and he's
mobile
big.
dude.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, I said it last show. Like when he was in Kentucky, I was like, man, this guy's like a junior still playing college basketball. Whatever. He's not that good. Then he went to Charlotte and was like in which, Charlotte. So not very good over there. I'm like, all of a sudden you get with Luka and it's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
But that goes to show you the importance of a team, right? How much when you're playing with those kinds of players, a Luka, a Jokic or whatever, how that elevates, right? The rising tides lift all boats, right? Like that. Oh, now I see how good PJ Washington is because you don't got to do everything. No, we got those two guys who do all the heavy lifting. I just got to rebound, hit open threes, play defense. I can do that. Works out well.
Sometimes it does. I mean, people play with LeBron like that and it didn't work out. Like I don't know. I don't like how the Mavericks play offense. Like
I don't either.
And especially when Luka's like basically like being coy with the media, like I can't even tell you how injured I am, but if I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. It's like, well, you look like shit. You know what I mean? Like there were a bunch of times in the game where it's like what do you like? Can you fucking run? Or just sit, like take a breather. But like I don't know. To me, dominating the ball. Okay, another little Henry deep thought watching basketball again was like, if you watch like a movie scene, like the conversation will be like 2 words, 4 words, 5 words, right? That's like the Pacers blur ball. Like,
yeah,
I talk, you talk, right? And I'm doing it right now, so this is ironic, but like Luka is lecturing. He's lecturer, like he's talking for a long time. Sometimes I'm like, look at Kyrie. Kyrie's one of the best looking athletes at his age I've ever seen. And we know he's an absolute wizard. I'm like, what is he? He's dying over there in the corner. What are you, like, how is this what we're doing? You're chucking up these no jump floaters over tall men, like
playing ref games, all that shit. Listen, Luka is James Harden. It's the same kind of ball, right?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
The Harden ball, not me, but who everyone derided. Oh, I hate that shit. So you hate Luka too? It's the same fucking basketball.
That's a really good point. Yeah,
same ball. Right? They're both doing the same thing. Like, so look, and it's effective to a point. It has its benefits and its usage, all that. But it's team games. David often says, right? We're not playing 5 individual games of 1-on-1. It's a game of 5-on-5, right? Basketball is jazz. But anyway, kudos to the Mavericks for advancing.
Do you think they have a chance now?
I'm worried about Luka's health. I'm not sure what's going on. Like, is he being coy with us? Look, I think he's probably actually hurt because at this time of the year, who isn't banged up at some point? He
looks hurt.
Right?
Yeah.
Right, and he looks it. I think Kyrie can do some things in that series, although I love what Ant said in his postgame. Looking forward to the next series? Yeah, I'm probably going to match up with Kyrie, so, I'm looking forward to that. I'm like, dude, this kid's just like, he's everything the NBA wants. Just like, he's right. He's a competitor, like all the things. And and it's almost like youthful exuberance / ignorance, Henry, right? Where it's like, well, maybe we don't say that in the media, but Ant's like not saying it to be malicious. He's like, this is what I'm actually feeling. I think they asked him, do you care about like helping Mike Conley when, he lost his last game 7? He's like, I wasn't with Mike I'm trying to win for me. He wasn't trying to be a dick. Like, I don't like Mike. It's just like, what do you mean? Like, I want to win. Like, and it's just
people will crush as soon as the Timberwolves lose. People will crush him for this.
But it's so stupid.
Or wave into the Nuggets fans like, oh, we know he was a loser because he did this.
But it's like,
or Jay McDaniels tried to do that.
Oh, the bounce stuff.
People, if they had lost that game,
oh my god, people.
Oh my gosh, it would have been just.
At the end of the day, it's sports, man. We're here to have fun. That's the point of this. It's fun. Yeah. We like fun. No, listen, I'm excited. I do look. It's not going to be a Minnesota Timberwolves sweep. Definitely not. I think the Mavericks for sure can do some things. I worry that the Mavericks. Well, they both play about the same amount of guys. 7.5 to 8, give or take, is about their rotation. 22-year-old legs, I think, matter. I like that. Derek Lively's 20. He's been so great. And by the way, shout out to Lively, who's gone through just hell this season, right? His mother died. His father's already dead. And for him to have the wherewithal to compartmentalize and play as well as he's playing, like, that is kudos. And his team has done a really good job of rallying around. Like Derek Jones Jr. talked about it, like, oh man, he's been through hell, but this is my guy. Like, we're here for him. Like, always checking in on him. See, it's a team. Like, that's a lovely thing. So I think it'll be a fun series. I'm gonna lean Wolves right now. I'm gonna say Wolves in 6. What say you?
Yeah. Wait, Wolves have home court, I guess?
I believe. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do. Well, I like to be aggressively wrong, so let's go Wolves in 5.
Ooh, nice. I like to be aggressively wrong. That's great.
I don't want to get expectations too high here, but yeah, that's what I'm feeling right now. Yeah.
And on the other side, look, Boston is the best team that Indiana has come up against in this postseason, but I don't know that anybody plays each possession like it matters more than the New York Knicks. So I think that is going to steal them a bit for this series against Boston. And we know Boston is prone to having these weird lapses where they just start just doing random shit and not playing basketball for whatever reason. I don't know why. So I can easily see that being a long series. But I think, damn. See, now it's like science in my brain. 9 guys versus, and Kristaps, I don't know what the deal is yet. Still not clear whether he's playing or not.
That's probably going to matter. Yeah.
Fuck it. I'm going to go on a limb. Pacers in 7.
Oh my gosh. That's
Fuck
exciting.
Fuck it. I'm going to go Pacers.
That's exciting.
Fuck it.
David is going to, I think, publish, he's putting some real research into this, and
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what he comes up with. He made a little point today that, well, we know all year, like, the Pacers aren't that great when Tyrese is bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard for him to win when Tyrese is bad,
Yep.
and he's about to be guarded by,
He's going to have bad games.
like,
Yep.
2 of the most
Drew
it's just
and-
so unfair that
Yeah.
Derek White and Drew Holiday are on the same team, and they like just make everything a nightmare. So they're gonna have to win
A bad game. A
without
bad Tyrese
Tyrese
game.
having big games,
Mhm.
right? I don't know what's gonna happen, and I don't know if Philly's back, but it seems like the Celtics are the better team, but
by
it
far.
does seem a little interesting. Oh my god, Ginger the Staffy is making some on the
Oh,
video
yeah.
version of this. She's being continually cute in the background of Jarod the entire time.
Yep.
And I'm a little distracted.
Turning around, letting her know, hello, Dad, I'm here. Are we doing something fun now? I'm
Yeah.
ready to do stuff.
Yeah.
No, look, the Celtics have been the best team all year, right? By every stat measurable. Net rating, like, I know. She's like, yeah, hey, what's going on? Hi, yeah, we're gonna do some fun stuff in a little while. Yeah. So, I mean, they should win this series. The Kristaps injury, I think, matters. And they go 9 deep, Indiana. I think that matters too.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Should be a fun series. Any closing thoughts, Mr. Abbott?
Actually, my one last little thing is Thunder.
Oh, we didn't talk
have their
about them.
3
Yes.
stars. Yeah, this has struck me as like, so we know that they can get anybody they want in the league. Basically, they have the assets to trade for anybody. But what is occurring to me now is that we are basically have a hard cap league now, and they have to pay Shea, Chet, and Jalen max contracts, which means if you offered them, who would be the dream? Anthony Edwards right now,
Right.
Like, well, I guess in that case they would just give you.
Right. Or
Chet or
like
Jalen
Laurie
Williams, right?
Markkinen maybe or something. I don't know.
Yeah, like whoever the app, like I literally think, like they could have traded for a star this year,
But didn't.
and now we wish they would have because they probably would be in the finals, right? But I think they're never going to do it, which means they're gonna, like they just literally can't pay. They know who they're going to pay, and they're not going to pay a 4th person max money because it's basically impossible, and because they have chintzy owners. But like, but suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, their whole stash of picks. We need to think about this differently. I don't think they can be packaged for stars for cap reasons. I think they need to be packaged for just incrementally better role players. So like, that's a weird.
This is where I wanted to go with this. Everybody's like, oh my God, OKC, they own the draft for the next 15 years. I go, but guys, like those picks have to turn into something, right?
Yeah.
They have to become something if they're going to be of any value. They have theoretical value, but it's not actually realized yet because I don't know who's going to be great at the 2029 draft. Zero idea who that person is. They clearly have a good nucleus with Shea, Chet, and Jalen Williams. We are betting on Jalen and Chet continuing to develop into all-star, all-NBA players, right? Like the thing is that this works because Shea is an MVP candidate. He finished second MVP. That's the thing, right? You need those kinds of guys. If those two are multi-time all-stars, potentially borderline MVP, all-NBA, now we're cooking with grass because then I think you're right. You can trade all those picks for your Ben Shepherd types, your Neesmith, like all the things that you need to win possessions. You made it a point. Oklahoma City's not a free agency destination. No free agent is going to say, yes, send me there. Like that's just not it. They're going to have to trade to acquire, right? But they have to match salary, which they don't have any right now, right? Lou Dort is making the most money after Shea. Well, that ain't going to be enough, right? So I think it'll be interesting to see what Sam Presti does and what Oklahoma City does, which, by the way, This was their first year getting past the first round of the playoffs
Yeah.
since Kevin Durant left 8 years ago.
An awesome job, right? Like, my part of me is like, man, you could have won. You could have won that series, right? Like,
listen, they had opportunities.
They had opportunities. Yeah.
So maybe it's just development, right? They just stay with what they have and they just keep developing their guys. And we're like, look, and we trade and we just get our Neesmith, our Shepherd, our Nemhard, our whoever.
I mean,
whoever.
Probably like Casey Wallace is better than those guys. You know
he might be.
Like,
he very well might be.
Like, yeah, it really might be. This seems so absurd that they just trade the picks into the future forever, right? And then until next time they're bad, and then you start
right.
Obviously, you're going to use some picks and they'll have some, but like they don't have a ton of roster spots. They don't have a ton of.
They don't.
They don't have a ton of room
so
here.
yeah, so Shea's already being paid. The only thing that might throw an oil or a fly into their ointment is Shea is 2 years older than the other guys. So if he's like, guys, I want another alpha in here next to me, then it's the question of, do you listen to Shea if you're the front office?
Yeah, and so everyone else doesn't have to get paid this upcoming year either.
Nope.
So like they could have a rent-a-star, right? And they could have had that this year, under cap rules, right?
I got it.
That seems like a miss.
Win the chip, let them go in free agency, and then keep. That's the plan. That's the play. There it is. Solve the Thunder.
Good job.
I just don't know who the star is. I gotta look to see who's got a year or two left in the deal.
Everything for them. Come on, they should do some stuff.
I do like Lauri Markkanen on that team, though. I know he's not like a top like 5 player, but he's very good.
He's super good. Yeah.
Like and your size, Chet and him, man, and Jalen Williams. Oh shit! I think Utah. Let's get him on the horn.
Yeah,
I like that deal. All right, folks. It'll be Henry and I again later in the week. We'll have some conference final stuff to go on from there. We'll have game 1s happening. Starts Tuesday, and then Wednesday will be the other game 1. So by Thursday, we'll have declarative predictions about who's doing what. No,
it's on, man. The season is getting real.
Real stuff. All right, guys. Enjoy. Talk to you later.